What is hyperinflation? It's the rapid, out-of-control increase in prices across a range of goods and services. An increase of 50% over a specific time period is considered a hallmark of hyperinflation. Turkmenistan exited the ruble-based monetary union in November 1993 and introduced its own currency, the Turkmeni manat. In the same month, Russia, on whose Gazprom pipelines Turkmenistan relied to transport its natural gas to market, cut Turkmen access to Western European hard currency markets, diverting its competitors' gas instead to the cash-strapped markets of Ukraine and the Transcaucasus ex-SSRs. As a result, one of the newly independent states experienced one of the worst bouts of hyperinflation in its history. Armenia's economy is damaged by the legacy of a centrally planned economy as well as the breakdown of former Soviet trading patterns. Soviet investment in and support for Armenian industry has virtually vanished, leaving only a few major enterprises in operation. Furthermore, the effects of the 1988 earthquake, which killed over 25,000 people and displaced 500,000, are still being felt. Land routes through Azerbaijan and Turkey have been closed. However, routes through Georgia and Iran are adequate and reliable. In 1992–93, the GDP had dropped nearly 60% from 1989 levels. For the first few years after its introduction in 1993, the national currency, the dram, experienced hyperinflation. The Republic of China experienced hyperinflation from 1948 to 1949, near the end of the Chinese Civil War. The highest denomination bill in 1947 was 50,000 yuan. The highest denomination was 180 million yuan by mid-1948. The gold yuan replaced the yuan in 1948 at an exchange rate of 1 gold yuan equals 3 million yuan. In less than a year, the greatest denomination was 10 million gold yuan. The silver yuan was temporarily issued in the last days of the Civil War at a valuation of 500 million gold yuan. Meanwhile, a regional bank's greatest denomination was 6 billion yuan, issued by Xinjiang Provincial Bank in 1949. After the new communist government introduced the renminbi, hyperinflation ended, with a devaluation of 1 to 10,000 old yuan in 1955. With the German invasion in April 1941, there was an abrupt increase in prices. This was due to psychological factors related to the fear of shortages and to the hoarding of goods. During the German and Italian Axis occupation of Greece, 1941 to 1944, the agricultural, mineral, industrial etc. production of Greece were used to sustain the occupation forces, but also to secure provisions for the Afrika Korps. As prices soared, the Germans and Italians started requesting more and more drachmas from the Bank of Greece to offset price increases. Each time prices increased, the note circulation followed suit soon afterwards. By November 1922, the value in gold of money in circulation had fallen from £300 million before World War I to £20 million. The Reichsbank responded by the unlimited printing of notes, thereby accelerating the devaluation of the mark. Germany went through its worst inflation in 1923. The currency instability in Venezuela that began in 2016 during the country's ongoing socio-economic and political crisis. Venezuela began experiencing continuous and uninterrupted inflation in 1983, with double-digit annual inflation rates. Following the disintegration of Yugoslavia in early 1992 and the outbreak of fighting in Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, monthly inflation would reach the benchmark for hyperinflation of 50% in the new Federal Republic of Yugoslavia, formerly known as Serbia and Montenegro. The governments of Zimbabwe was implement a tight monetary policy. Initially deemed a success because it decelerated inflation, the policy had unintended consequences. It caused an imbalance in the country's supply and demand of goods, generating a different kind of inflation called demand-pull inflation, the upward pressure on prices that is caused by supply shortages. Zimbabwe's central bank continued to try various ways to undo the destabilizing effects of its tight monetary policy. These policies were largely unsuccessful. By March 2007, the country was experiencing full-blown hyperinflation. The Hungarian pengo was initially created in the aftermath of World War I to stabilize the country's economy and control inflation. The Great Depression affected Hungary's agricultural industry especially hard, and the country's rising debt forced the central bank to weaken the currency to offset costs by loosening financial and monetary policy. Later in the decade, the Vienna Awards awarded territory to Hungary that it claimed were lost during World War I, but these provinces were economically immature and eventually strained the national economy. When World War II struck, Hungary was in a poor economic condition, and the central bank was virtually totally under the authority of the government, issuing money based on the government's budgetary demands without any financial limitation. The inflationary atmosphere eventually got so severe that currencies began to vanish from circulation, first with silver coins and then moving on to bronze and nickel money, as the component metals became considerably more expensive than the coins themselves. As the conflict drew to a close, the standing government gained complete control of banknote manufacturing without any visible collateral, while the invading Soviet army began producing its own military money, further reducing demand for the pengo. After World War II, Hungary had its greatest hyperinflation, and despite various large-scale initiatives to stabilize the currency, the only solution was to adopt a new currency, the forint, which had a direct translation into gold and hence into other world currencies. The forint is still in use today, although it is projected to be phased out over the next several years by the euro.